Hello, Guardians. It is Ebontis here, and what I want to do is break down a lot of screenshots from the trailer we got today for Destiny 2 Beyond Light Stasis, and we've got a lot of images that are going to kind of open up an idea of how some abilities are going to work. We get a preview of a couple enemies. We've got a couple supers in use, and also maybe a tease of an exotic. So let's jump into the new screenshots for Destiny 2 Beyond Light and see what we've got. So the first one that you guys can see here is what looks to be kind of maybe an opening campaign mission, maybe just a little storyline, but up in the middle of the frame, kind of bottom middle, you'll see where you got the three Guardians walking up to what looks like to be a big satellite array structure, probably an opening campaign section, potentially where we're jumping into kind of the first areas that we can see. Now the next one that pops up shortly thereafter is going to be one, looks like we're actually on the planet of Europa, definitely in first person form. Got some pretty cool things to look at here. One, looks like we've got maybe new armor sets. It looks like the Warlock is packed up for a camping trip. And then also you can see in the snow as the Guardians walk through, they're actually carving a path. So I don't know if we actually have deep snow in certain parts of this, how things are going to interact with the world. But I'd say this is probably the biggest interaction outside of maybe like footprints that we've seen for actually changes of effects in the world. Now this one potentially could be my favorite. Just because we actually get to see a lot more detail on the new kind of fallen, frozen, stasis skinned enemies. We have here what looks to be a fallen captain with two ice stasis swords. I'm not entirely sure. Ice stasis, I'm probably going to use that interchangeably throughout the entire video, so keep that in mind. Main reason is we'll see actually some of the effects of what the stasis ability is going to do. Sometimes they actual in the promo video, let's say encase and shatter, things that happen if you're frozen. So stasis or ice seems like it's going to be interchangeable, but the two ice swords from the captain definitely going to be a different variation. If you guys are looking more for that like brand new Fallen Veil enemy race, that's probably not going to be coming in this one, but it does look like the Fallen are going to be having different abilities, similar to the way we've seen other factions kind of get reworked. You know, maybe the way Scorn was different. Hopefully maybe we've got more variety when it comes to the stasis or frozen Fallen. Next one that we got here is going to be, looks like a bigger patrol zone shot. You've got the three sparrows on the left, so you kind of get a distant shot of them driving in. Again, we've got kind of more of the city structure in the top left corner where you can see everything in this entire planet is basically blasted with a blizzard. Be good if I could talk. But everything is going to have like icicles that go sideways because it's extremely windy, it's extremely cold. So everything seems to have like sideways icicles on it next to everywhere. You got Jupiter in the background, looks very cool. I'm not entirely sure what the effect is, if it's more like a Northern Lights thing. But again, bigger open patrol spaces. Not entirely sure how big the planet itself is going to be. Main reason because Europa's been off and on in development since part of Destiny 1. So if they've had a lot of time to work on it, hopefully it's a larger, fleshed out environment, especially as it is the main one that we get. Cosmodrome is coming with Beyond Light, but mostly they said for Season 12, which will be in November, now November 10th. First piece we're going to get is going to be on a smaller scale, mostly for the New Light people to come in. They say in Season 13 is when they're going to flesh out Cosmodrome more to be more of the patrol space that you might remember from Destiny 1. I don't think it's going to include the Plague Lands, but also when Beyond Light launches, Cosmodrome is not going to be a big piece of the story, so Europa is going to be our main piece of interaction, so hopefully it's big. Just, that's really all I'm getting at there. Now, of course, they got to have the three image hero shot here, but of course we have what looks to be a giant ice lake, very, very flat, kind of frozen over. And the pyramid ship is parked on top of it or floating out there. I can't entirely tell. If you look out towards the back right corner of the pyramid, kind of over here on the right side of the screen, it does look like either it's just resting on it and you can't see, or it could be floating just a smidge above the ice itself. I don't think there's any amount of ice that could actually hold that thing unless whatever this would be considered like a lake is 100% frozen solid. But either way, that is a giant pyramid ship, and we're getting a better scale of how it looks to the Guardians because they're still fairly far away, and that thing is huge. Now here we get a good image of a fallen ketch, a couple fallen ships in there, and we get a little more idea of a shot that we saw when we were walking up. So when we were trudging through the snow, down here in the front right corner of the image, you can see what kind of looks to be the little campsite, little dome, kind of a little outpost maybe, a couple people standing in front of it. To the left, you've got this big giant ice wall with kind of a one hole in it to pass through. We do get to see the ice with these like red veins in it. I don't know if there's a scientific reason the ice looks reddish at some points or if there's something more dark and sinister going on, but we get to see that as well. Behind it, you get to see that like satellite array that we got to see a little bit of, and even farther in the background, a big dome with like an outpost. Maybe it's the Deep Stone Crypt. something pretty substantial is much farther in the background, which we will likely get to later. Now, here we get to see a tease of some of the weapons. Remember, we are dealing with kind of some Golden Age tech, which is where the Deepstone Crypt and some of the Exos and stuff were born from. We're also definitely 100% in a Fallen Catch. We are inside a Fallen ship. On the left and right, you can see the banners hanging, and I think my Twitch chat told me correctly, but if you guys know better, please comment below. We've got the Fallen House of Dark, or Darkness, which is run by Aramis at this point, and she's the one kind of running the show right now, so we definitely need to... for one, know the fact that we are kind of in a new Fallen House, either pulling everything together, trying to get a little bit more kind of consolidation of the Fallen since they've been so scattered thus far. And it's the Fallen Kell of Darkness. So if it's like the House of Dark or House of Darkness, of course we're working with Darkness powers now in Stasis, which we'll get to in a little bit, but definitely spending some time in a Fallen Catch or a Fallen ship. We've seen these looks before, so more time will be spent in one of those. The next image looks like a completely different area. This is either subterranean, definitely still looks like we're in the Fallen space. For sure, architecture is going to be very similar, but we're either indoors, out of the weather, more of almost the Titan color scheme that we've got in here, kind of more of the teals and everything of that nature, but also very much indoors, because if we're on Europa, otherwise we'd be freezing our butt off. So an indoor shot of potentially, you know, invading some of the Fallen structures that we're going to be looking at. But on the complete flip side, we've also got this. Now here's where it looks very much like Io. So you've got the Vex structures. If it looks like the Pyramidian strike to you, you are very accurate. So you've got the Vex waterfall over here, which potentially is the radiolaria or that Vex fluid that you probably have seen many times when you shoot the Vex. You've got these large kind of square structures that build their pyramids, it looks like. And yet we're still in the ice, potentially, possibly a subterranean, maybe a tunnel, lower level of Europa. Again, if something like Europa, a brand new planet, has an upper, you know, above ground area and then a subterranean level, kind of like the moon, we're going to have a lot of stuff to explore. So that's actually pretty exciting. Now, the main reason I want to stop on this image right here, it's dark, you know, the color schemes, can't really tell too much as what's going on. Left side might be an auto rifle, right here in the middle might be a short little submachine gun. But it's what is actually on the back of one of these, and it looks to be the Warlock, is this large thing right here. We'll see it in action later. I'm just showing you guys to keep in mind this weapon. We get to see it later on. I can't tell if it's like a shrapnel, stasis, tractor cannon, or what it's going to be. Definitely seems to be a very unique looking weapon, so look for that one likely to be an exotic later on. Of course, they like to tease them. It's really hard to tell, but we have a couple shots of what it might actually do I'll put in later. Now here, it looks like we're in the same area. Again, not sure if it's Deepstone Crypt, subterranean, like Fallen area, but we get a couple shots of some of the armor. So you get to see on the right side of this image, you've got the Hunter, you got the bigger cloak on the side. In the middle, you've got the Titan. If you look down here at the boots, they actually look like snowshoes almost, which is kind of cool. On the left, of course, the Warlock looks like it's got a giant kind of helmet on, and then I'm not entirely sure what's on the, like, brightly purple colored, you know, sigil or emblem there on the left side of the chest or the arm. If it's a bond, it actually looks like more vibrant than most bonds that I've seen. And again, I can't tell if these are exotic helms. At least the Titan and the Warlock look very similar, where they're going to be kind of, say, that's the seasonal set of armor that we're going to see. And then on the left, I don't know if that's a Warlock exotic or maybe that's just the way the little kind of linear lighting setup is on each one of these pieces of gear. But overall, just wanted to show the gear. It's still not the best lit, but still get an idea what's coming. Now, while this isn't the clearest picture, this is our first typical shot of what the Titan Super is going to look like related to its stasis powers. Now, there's another shot going ahead that I'll show you guys what basically looks like it happens, and it kind of seems to be what some, like, kind of thought before. You've got basically a Titan Hulk Smash, but it is going to be a Hulk Smash that is going to send a wave of stasis, you know, shards from the ground that come up, and it shoots out in front of it. So let me kind of try and actually get forward a little bit here, see if I can find that shot so you guys can see it. But basically the idea is the big hands seem to get these large stasis, you know, crystallized structures around the hands, and then it's just this giant slam that happens, and out in front of it comes these ice waves. So this is about the best shot I can find for it. For one, if you look in the top left corner, it looks like there's almost like an ice crystal that is unaffected by everything when you watch the video. And again, the video's in the description below if you guys do want to see that one. It's definitely down there if you want to look for it. But you got a couple enemies that would be in the front of this shot, and it's just waves of this, like, almost like a, you know, like an ice earthquake that travels forward and shoots these ice shoots up out of the sky. I don't know how long they stay there. If you do this, if you have like some cover that you can use for a little while, or it's just a big wave of damage that kind of destroys most things in its path, or maybe it pops them up in the air. Very curious to see the functionality of this, and we've got some other things that are going to be intriguing as well. But the kind of particles out here in black, kind of between the two pillars of ice, is likely what remains of an enemy that was killed, shattered, kind of everything at the same time. Now here's where things really start to get interesting. This, I believe, is going to be a hunter grenade that's capable of doing this, because we'll see it later on in PvP as well. But what we've got here is, as they're running through the space, you see all the enemies coming down from the left, and it's a lot of shanks, so they're able to fly. But in a previous image, the giant blue ice structure that you see sticking, horizontally out of the wall is not there. They throw a grenade and it actually pops out, and it's going to be a platform that they can stand on, which I'm sure is going to allow some people to break the game, which should be fun. But if you're like building your own platforms as you go, that's going to be very interesting for traversal. And either certain classes are going to be able to do this better than others, or everybody's going to have some variation of this. Either way, the fact that you can build your own platform in a situation, that's going to get interesting, and also going to kind of set up some very, very interesting strategies that we're going to be able to do. So this is another shot. As you guys can see, some of it might not be the clearest, but it's mid animation. But you can see like the structure itself, the ice has shot directly out of the wall, and it even seems to have wrapped around the edge of this kind of square structure. So you could even jump to the ledge that's appeared around the corner. Again, I don't know the duration of how long these things are going to last. Maybe it just lasts as long as, say, a void wall, so you got to jump and go. But either way, if it's like a frozen wall of ice instead of a void wall of void flame, it's still going to be there for a little while, so you could honestly get some different mobility and different options of jumping on around the map by making your own platforms. I don't know, seems very, very intriguing overall. Now here we get a couple shots that I'm probably going to try and go between, or at least put them in order with you guys as we go. But if you look in the left, I'm going to try and zoom out so you can see kind of the whole frame. The left-hand side, we actually get to see our first kind of tease of what the Hunter Super is like here. Now, you can see it looks like two giant stasis or ice axes that it's holding onto. And as you proceed forward through frames of the video, which I'm not going to put them all in here, but actually throws them in kind of that swirling whip pattern, kind of what looks to be similar to a Blade Barrage animation, but now it's throwing these ice axes, which don't seem to cover as much like of a spread of like 20 Blade Barrage knives, but if you hit it, it definitely seems to freeze your targets pretty substantially. So this is definitely the Hunter Super in action. Let me see if I can get one more frame. So again, one more, as you guys can see pretty clearly, two ice axes, and then as you play through this thing frame by frame, you'll actually see as the hunter holds on to the axes, that's how it actually starts the animation, but one of them actually kind of leaves the hand and the other one gets whipped around, so you actually see them fly out in front of the hunter. But this is actually one of the first true like glimpses of mid gameplay where you can actually see the hunter's ice axes right before they're thrown. Looks very, very, very cool. Now, the next shot here, we have actually just a grenade launcher. Now, why would I even care about this thing? Not likely a big deal, but it's also the enemies I want to focus on in the background, same as the previous image. We are going to be fighting Fallen, for sure. But these type of enemies we've seen somewhat similarly in a bigger form when you do Scourge of the Pass. The raid boss in there is a giant mech warrior, or whatever you want to call it. It's a big mech, it's a big machine, and it looks like we have smaller scale enemies like this. Maybe it's like the Fallen version of an ogre. We actually have to fight this little, like, maybe it's a thrall or something, like, not even a thrall, I'm thinking of the wrong thing. Maybe it's a little dreg or whatever, powering this little mechanical thing, either so it can survive in the frozen tundra, or these are just like a new kind of brute style enemy for the Fallen. Either way, there's quite a few of them out there, and they're not the scale of like a raid boss, but definitely something we have to consider. The other piece is the weapon we're holding. Now, the little digital screen that we can see on the side over here, I don't know if I'd read too much into what that's actually showing. It's probably just somewhat arbitrary, but the idea is we have to remember Stasis is coming in as a damage type across the board. We know we're getting abilities, which I'm kind of going through and showing you guys. We got the Titan Smash, the Hunter Ice Axes, and we'll get to the Arc, or the Staff for the Warlocks. But weapons themselves are going to have stasis damage as well. Now, we don't know if that damage is going to be able to, hey, you do more damage. Maybe you build up a freezing effect on an enemy as opposed to like setting an enemy on fire. Not entirely sure how all that's going to work, but this, I think, potentially could be a stasis grenade launcher, or maybe it's just an arc one. But either way, the projectile that flies out looks like a very light color. So it again reminded me of the fact that we could be getting stasis grenade launchers, and if those have effects to them, we could really be seeing some game-changing effects in what the game's going to be offering for us, a variety of gameplay. Now, this shot right here is one I wanted to pause on for you guys to see. So you've actually got Fallen that definitely have a reskin effect to them. A Shank is a Shank. It's probably not going to have too much difference to it. But these, I think, are the Wraiths, if I remember correctly. It's the ones that want to come up and smack you around. But you can see it's got like a pole staff with the ice power, you know, kind of ice crystal in the end is like a staff that it would slash you with. And also you'll notice the apparel that the Fallen are wearing is definitely going to work on keeping them more warm as well. So you got more Fallen shoulders, a bit more of a cloak, definitely a completely different color scheme. So these are Darkness Fallen for sure, pretty much like anything else we've ever faced before. Now, in that same vein, this is a very similar shot. Now, the one before is before you see a grenade get thrown, and it looks to be maybe functioning similar to like an arc bolt where it has to either scan or kind of get ready to have its effect go. But when you watch the video on this one, what you'll see is the fact that the freezing effect or the stasis effect actually kind of travels outside from the grenade landing. And I don't know if it's like proximity, if you're too close you're going to get frozen, or how it actually works, or if it's just the radius of the blast. But each of these Fallen, as they're running at you, gets frozen like mid-attack. Now, trying to like put a shield in front of enemy or shut things down or whatever it is can be beneficial to blind them, but just really just lock an enemy from doing anything is really, really powerful. And again, it's going to give you a nice variety of what gameplay changes we're going to be faced with, which also means we're probably going to get new types of challenges. If we can shut some enemies down for a little while in one area and freeze them, that means Bungie's definitely going to have to get creative in these encounters, so I'm very curious to see how the gameplay changes with our new abilities. Now, this is probably one of the better frames I could get for the Hunter Wall ability that we can see. Now, as you guys can tell, this is Widow's Court. This is the PvP map Widow's Court. That hasn't changed. So, obviously, you know, some maps are still coming forward. Now, the other thing to note is they throw the grenade down and then they jump up over it. So it does kind of build over probably a short time. However long, say you throw a void wall grenade and how long it takes to get to its full width. It takes a minute for the big ice shoots to come up from the ground. But it definitely seems pretty substantially wide. So I've got one more screenshot. Let me switch over to that. And here you can see that it is definitely wider. So the Hunter's like mid-jump, so we're farther away, but the actual ice wall itself is a big deal. Now, what is this actually going to do? It's actually going to change the way you can move around the map if you can make, you know, new pieces of cover, basically, that are going to allow you to switch between areas, not be completely stuck in one section, maybe transition from one side to another. Hunters, and depending on what the other grenades can do, are really going to be powerful, but if Hunter can build a wall that is this substantial, the fact that you could move around behind it, I don't know how much damage it's going to be able to take, but it seems pretty thick, so you're probably going to be able to, you know, throw a wall down, maybe get some from one side of cover to another behind this wall, and be pretty much good to go. So the fact that this is even going to be an option in PvP is going to change up almost the way every map could possibly play. So it's like, hey, if I need to block off an area, it's completely shut down. Now, you're not getting through. This stuff is pretty big. You're going to be shutting down some areas and able to move yourself between a very large piece of cover so you can change sides much more quickly. Now, while this isn't the clearest shot, it is the only one where I got to see this little like ninja star thing mid-flight. And it looks like the Hunter, again, this is in the same PvP match, you only get about 5 seconds of anything, so it's picking apart frames. But in this map, the Hunter throws twice. So I don't know if it's an exotic with 2 throws, if it's just a one and then another like a delayed reaction, or maybe it's just 2 charges of melee. They hit the enemy once, and I don't know if it's the second throw, a second follow through, or whatever, but the second throw completely freezes these 2 PvP characters against you. So again, you can blind an enemy, you can put a wall in front of an enemy, but if you can just completely freeze an enemy in PvP, that's going to be, again, a game changer. Now, hitting 2 melees with something is not going to be an easy thing to do, but if you get to that moment and you can freeze 2 just like this, like statues stuck together, and I don't know if it takes a super to get out of frozen, maybe, who knows what, you know, maybe your light's got enough warmth to be able to pull you out of it. Either way, you're looking at a very powerful effect of basically shutting people down to a whole different level. Now, maybe you can't shut down a super if somebody's in it, just have to see how that goes, but freezing people in place, definitely going to see some interesting montages where they freeze them and then probably go thump them and shatter them. I don't know, seems very cool and fun. Now, this shot is, for one, if you look at the backdrop, it looks to be very much like the Deepstone Crypt, so potentially this is like your first little tease of a raid. Does look like we've got Fallen in here, maybe it's just the Deepstone Crypt like area of a story. I'm always surprised if they would actually show a raid, but they do kind of show a glimpse of it on the Bungie.net website for Beyond Light, and it looks like similar architecture here with the Almost looks like kind of very, very futuristic mainframes is what I would picture the things on either side of the picture to be. So little tease of the raid architecture possibly. But you also notice the hand is holding on to this like ice spear, which I'll show you guys later on, and this may be more the first person use of the spear itself. But you'll see what it's actually capable of doing is shooting a little orb and freezing the enemies in place. And then when they're frozen, they have a couple shots where they're frozen, and then an enemy comes in and smacks them and they shatter. So if you can freeze an enemy, probably depends on the level of the enemy. It's probably harder to freeze a major versus a minor enemy, stuff like that. But if an enemy's frozen, all you got to go is punch them and they shatter. That's almost better than a finishing move, because the fact that you can, you know, finish something off without having to spend ammo, energy, abilities, anything like that actually seems fairly cool. So here's another picture of that shattering. So you see like 3 enemies that are frozen, and looks to be a Titan maybe doing that little mini slam, the ballistic slam, and all these enemies are just shattering in place. But if you look in the background, in the back you've got 3 drag in the back fighting. Looks to be one of the more outdoor spaces because we're on the white snow-covered areas. But also it looks like the scale of the area could be pretty substantial. So again, this is more of an outdoor fight. But the fact that you can freeze and shatter enemies actually sounds just very helpful and functional, and also potentially like finishing moves. Can't tell you how many times I don't have to reload. I can just finish an enemy and still conserve ammo, which is quite beneficial. Alright, so finally, this is one of the shots of the Warlock actually casting their super. So you'll see the super with the big giant staff. This is kind of confirmed to be the Warlock from all the images that we've seen. And this is the big staff. If you can see the shape of the staff up top, it's kind of got the big, kind of longer fork in the front and the 2 smaller forks on the side of what looks to be kind of almost like a ice sword on the end of a spear. But this is what you can see. It looks like the big shattering effect. It looks like we're underground right now in one of the Vex structures, but also some fallen down here. So it's a weird combination of fallen and Vex all over Europa. And again, here just another shot of the actual ice, or, you know, stasis staff, whatever you want to call it. I'm probably going to say them both all the time. Staff in mid-use, like firing this little ice bolt out, just freezing enemies. So the power of this thing's cool. And then you've got another shot. And basically what you're seeing here is the remnants of almost what I would picture like a Nova Warp style explosion, but with the stasis staff out. It looks like there's just a group of enemies around, and this blasting, shattering effect goes out, centering from the Warlock, breaking everything up, shooting the enemies back, killing most of them. Seems like a very powerful kind of stasis shatter. Similar functionality, I think, to Nova Warp in blast radius, probably just functioning in a different way. Now, this image right here is the one kind of bringing back before. For one, you guys can tell it's the Warlock. You can see the robe. You got the big backpack on the back. And somebody on Twitter, I can't even remember who, mentioned like it looks like the Warlock's wearing a VR helmet. I don't know what that thing's going to look like, but we'll have to see. But the main focus here is the actual shotgun tractor cannon. I'm not entirely sure. But what it looks like to me when it's in use, and again, I've got to do screenshots because I'm trying not to get any copyright strikes here or anything like that. But when you actually see it in use, it actually looks to be kind of like a similar shape to tractor cannon for what you're holding, but it seems to fire like a shotgun, but it almost fires like ice shrapnel, or shrapnel, however you say that. And it seems to fire that out in kind of like, you know, a cone, a blast. So this is, again, one of those where maybe it's like a heavy or an exotic potential thing that works similar to the way tractor cannon does, where you, like, you know, suppress them. This one may do like a cone of freezing or stasis abilities that you can use from this shotgun. And one of the more final shots. Now, similar to the captain that we saw in the beginning, this looks fairly similar. Again, I don't think this is actually Aramis. Maybe it is, but maybe not. I'm not entirely sure. But again, you've got a very, you know, very darkness-embraced fallen enemy. 2 stasis swords. Pretty powerful looking, honestly, and just kind of a menacing look because the fallen is now completely white in the face. It's got more of the white pads and everything, the ice swords. Just a very cool shot of what is potentially to come from all the enemies on Europa. And this is kind of the final shot. It's basically all 3 characters in their stasis supers, possibly. But the very obvious one on the right, the Warlock floating, of course, with its ice spear. I don't know if it's just the others are glowing from it, but you can see the Titan, or the Hunter in the middle. So we saw the ice axes as maybe one variant for the ice, but also looks like there's potentially an ice staff that it slams into the ground, or maybe it's slamming both axes together. Not entirely clear as you see it. I've tried to go frame by frame. There's only so much you can see. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, looks like the Titan, but it does look like, again, it's holding that exotic shrapnel stasis launcher. I don't know what that thing's going to be, but whatever it is just kind of the final shot. So that's all the basically images and breakdown of what I could see in the trailer itself. I will put a link to the trailer below so you guys can go watch it in full clear. It's only like a minute long, so hopefully you guys enjoyed a bit more of a breakdown on this one. But again, Stasis, November 10th. I did want to clear up. So when it comes to Xbox Game Pass, just to be clear, I'm going to try and make sure I read it off of the proper thing. Xbox Game Pass is going to be part of Destiny now. So the way it's going to work is if you have Xbox Game Pass, you will get access to the standard edition of each expansion. Forsaken, Shadowkeep, and then coming in on November 10th, you'll have Beyond Light. But if you actually do have Xbox Game Pass, you're going to be getting in September both Forsaken and Shadowkeep come separately. Now, all it is the expansions themselves, any seasonal content, so Season of the Worthy, Season of Dawn, Season of Arrivals, all that content is going to be separate. That will be a separate purchase. They also said later this year, when obviously Xbox Series X comes out, they'll probably do some announcement for PlayStation as well. They said it will be 4K and 60 frames per second for Destiny 2 on Series X. And then remember, if you have Xbox Game Pass, you're going to be getting Beyond Light, the base expansion without the Season Pass included in Beyond Light. So if you have Xbox Game Pass, you're going to be able to play Beyond Light and just enjoy the campaign, whatever comes with that first season. Any future seasons you'll have to get separately on top of that, but it's a nice way for more people to come in, enjoy the bigger chunk of content, and if you want to keep the experience going, you'll be able to get the Season Pass stuff after that. So just a little teaser after that as well. Beyond Light is going to be on Xbox Season Pass, or on Xbox Game Pass. Season Pass content afterwards, that will be separate. But again, remember, you do have to maintain that subscription, whether it be $10 or $15 for Ultimate, to continue to play it. If you do have that Xbox, Game Pass subscription like lapse, or say Destiny comes out of the Game Pass, you will have to buy the game separately as well. So hopefully that clarifies. They have a full page on it, so go check Bungie.net. But that was the main piece of news from the Xbox Showcase today for Destiny. There were some very other cool games in there. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought about for one, the Xbox Game Showcase, if there were any games that stood out to you guys that you want to see, and also just if you guys have any other thoughts of what we're seeing here in this trailer. I broke down a lot of frames here, but there's plenty of stuff I could easily miss. So if you guys do have any other information you find, comment below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. If you guys want to find me, you can find me on Twitch and Twitter. It's Ebontis on both. Right here, if you guys haven't subbed yet, hit that subscription button and the alert bell. We're like 1,200 away from 50K, so please hit that sub button. The support has been awesome, so thank you guys very much, and I'll see you soon.